Hi everyone, Shaun here. Hello Albert.
Hey Sean, nice to see you again.
Good. Yes, lovely to see you again. So today we're going to be talking about energy and not some kind of energy that's like floating around us or energy that comes out of the plug. It's actually our physiological energy within our bodies. And we're going to be talking about an internal rhythm that we usually have through the day, but also how this can affect performance if we don't look at our rest periods often enough, and what happens to our nervous system when we actually look at the nervous system ramping up over time, and how that can lead to cognitive decline. It can lead to burnout eventually, and it can lead to a lot of relational issues in the workplace as well. And we'll gear the talk around people at home, but also mainly leaders in the performance setting. And maybe we'll start with the little instance we had during our working day, Albert, yesterday.
Yeah,
That's a good starting place to begin.
yeah, it's a good point. So I've been very busy recently, especially working online on projects. And so what tends to happen for me is I go into a project, I start the work, and I ramp up, and I almost get like into a hyper focused mode, which feels really stimulating, and I feel quite engaged. But I also notice when I'm that focused, I can become quite maybe a bit short and maybe a little bit annoyed at any distractions. It's almost like my vision gets a lot more narrow and my energy goes up. And there's this, I don't know, it's interesting as well because I like that level of stimulation. And I know a lot of times when I work with clients around time management and work-life balance and rest and all of these challenges, but a lot of people say that in a sense they thrive in the buzz or the high stress environment. They actually want that because it gives you a sense of purpose and drive. And so that's the headspace I was in yesterday. And
Mm.
then you reminded me I need to take breaks. And so we had this interesting discussion about how the body functions and how, in a way, we need to respect the natural rhythms of the body, which at the time didn't really make sense to me because I felt I feel good. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling stimulated. I'm feeling
Mm.
optimistic. It doesn't feel like negative stress. I don't feel anxious. And yet, based on what I know now about the physiology, even when it feels good, if you sustain that stress for too long, it becomes problematic, or that's the argument you had. Can you just talk a little bit more about why, how that works, what the function is?
Yeah, yeah. The one thing is, so let's take it from a daily perspective in terms of your stress response actually wakes you up in the morning. It's a
Yeah,
vital thing to actually have for us to get up in the morning. And depending on who we are, some of us are the early birds, but some of us like to stay in bed, right? Our energy systems operate at different levels at different times of the day. And we call that circadian rhythm. Yeah. And there's that natural undulating experience of the body. So depending on who we are in the morning, one of those systems will be working, and some of us take a little bit slower to take off, but the others get out of bed and want to go and change the world straight away. That's just how it is. And what happens then is, in a leadership sense, we can already tie that into how to look in the workplace, is that if we are working with a team or a specific leader and they're wanting outcomes for energy management, how can I resource myself better? Is that we'll look at those rhythms so we can then harness the potential of his energy at particular times in the day. The most important thing we're trying to do here is not reach a stage of depletion. Those feel-good chemicals you were speaking of, it's being stimulated. Eventually, the body will get tired of actually energetically giving off all of those hormones and those feel-good sensations in the body, because it takes energy to produce a feeling or an
yeah,
experience. Yeah. So respecting that natural undulating curve up and down is what's going to help our organism effectively use its energy. And then when we're resting, we're actually resting. So we're not actually fighting the system when it's coming down. Like I know for
mm,
me, I technically start to hit a really flat spot between 2 and 4 p.m. because I'm an early riser. From 6 a.m. till at least 1, you've got me. I'm focused, I'm dedicated, I'm creative, I'm collaborative, I'm not arguing. I have enough energy for the day. But then I reach that flat spot. And that's when I don't want to be annoyed. I don't want to be bothered. I'm not feeling like I want to work. That's when I start to nap. I'll start to go and nourish it with a bit more food, and I'll change the scenery by getting out into nature. So I respect that rhythm because I know the next up is going to be much better and more effective and more optimal for my health when I hit the next wave coming up. And we don't really perform better. I learned this from my athlete days, from my own burnout, that we don't perform better by working harder and pushing through fatigue. We're then actually leading to that exhaustion, that non-replenishing state.
Yeah.
Need the dip to replenish.
Yeah. And I guess I hear that, and I'm also wondering about how, because I think what I find challenging is when I'm on that high, I'm almost resistant to come off it, because even yesterday was a good example.
Yeah.
I was on the whole morning and I'm almost getting into a hyper-focused zone. And if someone doesn't pull me out, then I'll just stay there.
Yeah.
But then if I do and I decide, okay, I'm going to try and respect my rhythms, and I went for a walk and I was in the beginning pacing, and then gradually I come down because I'm not in a narrow focused visual stimulating environment. I'm in nature. I'm also spending my energy. So everything changes around me. But then when I came back, I was quite tired. And so I wonder there's a couple of questions. The one is, how do I know what my rhythms are? And so I can ride the waves instead of like steep incline and crash, which happens with a lot of people. Or some people I know would say they tend to go to bed and then they can't come off this curve. They're still busy in their heads and the adrenaline still keeping them up. And then their whole circadian rhythm gets thrown. So how do you identify your cycle, if that makes sense?
There's actually a few free tests on the web. You can Google.
We'll add them at the bottom, yeah?
You can Google some, and a circadian rhythm test. So one, knowing your rhythm is vital. And you're definitely perceptive enough to know what that, I don't know, it does that. You're perceptive enough to know what your rhythm is. Oh, I'm a morning person. Oh, I'm an evening person. I'm a night.
Yeah, so you start with what you do know about your rhythm. That feels like a good place, like coaching.
Yeah, exactly. Where's the starting point and what are you most aware of now already? And then it's really, okay, now I want to optimize this thing or make it better somehow. So one, it doesn't impact my health long term. And two, I'm actually performing. This is quite annoying, this little AI thumb thing. I'm actually performing in a way that's really resourceful, not depleting. Yeah.
And I guess my hunch then is, if anyone watches this video and they think, okay, maybe I need to review how I spend energy.
Yes.
Initially, you'll need to feel like you're holding yourself back. At least that's my experience. Is today I can either go back on my usual zone, which feels very stimulating, but I know is not respecting natural cycles, or I can try and change my rhythm, which will mean I need to interrupt my state. I need to stop myself and almost create a bit more of a natural rhythm and experiment with a different way of working with my energy cycle.
Yes. So I just want to finish the one last point from the previous one is that, the curve going up.
Yeah.
You get stuck in that on state. Can't rest now. Oh, I'm struggling to sleep. You see the patterns evolving or emerging in your other kind of pursuits in life where you want to relax, you can't slow down, you get agitated easily, things like that. So you might still be hyper functioning and hyper focused, but you might not see where your replenishing and your recovery, like your sleep and your diet and all those things, start to change because of the hyper adrenalized state. So when we're in that hyper adrenalized state, you actually don't feel you're tired.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem, isn't it?
You came back off that curve, you're coming down the curve after your walk. And I've done this with groups before, is that when we regulate their system and we just clear the first few layers of stress out of the body, eventually one woman said to me, I actually feel tired now. Like I'm actually really tired. So knowing you're tired is a very important signal, right? So we know we're not pushing into excess or depletion. So
yeah,
the curve going up and up and up and up, that hyperadrenalized state, we might not feel we're actually tired.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
important. Yeah.
And maybe on that, so there's that piece. And then I guess so initially you have to disrupt some of your usual patterns. As with any change behavior, we need to change things, and it might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But also what I found quite interesting was when I did my therapy, which is more embodied therapy, and I also slowed down and reflected and felt my tiredness. By the end of the session, I was back to energy. And I think that's what people don't realize is they think once I come down, it'll just keep going down and then I won't be able to pick myself up. But the body actually replenishes itself and then gets back for another up curve. And so the down curve shouldn't be seen as a negative of I'm tired and I shouldn't be tired because it's a work day, but rather allowing myself to be tired, to slow down, to change the kind of work I do. I've noticed what I sometimes try to do if I don't have that energy is to focus on tasks that don't take that much energy or that is a bit more like admin-y, like it requires less attention.
Yeah.
And so even just doing that in the rest phase sometimes helps your body come back and then you can go back up. Is that fair? Yeah.
And that reminds me of like during my athlete days as well. It's active recovery. I felt because I was so, when you're competing and training at that level, your body is slightly stimulated to a very high level as well, the extremes of it. And when you come down and you slow down, it's actually now we're talking about that pattern breaking. To slow someone down again is actually quite threatening and fearful. It's like, because I've been doing this thing so long, the organism now is that's so different, right? So I had to really wind myself down. A bit of fun rolling, a bit of slower movement. Maybe it's a walk. I'm still expending energy, but I could still feel the energy in me vibrating or running at a pace in my nervous system that was like I had trained a few hours before. So slowly winding yourself down to really interrupt that pattern is vital because again, we're not trying to do, remember it's this, we're not trying to do this on, off, on, off, on, off either.
Yeah, also not trying to do this, which is what the work environment tends to put us under is you need to always perform. And so there's also some stigma and guilt around
culture. You can't rest, you can't stop. What does that say about you? There's all of that as well that plays into the psyche of the honoring or wanting to slow down again.
So I guess in summary, for me, I'll give a bit of takeaways and you can also share some points. Firstly, my own experience and what I'd encourage someone to try for themselves if they're watching this is to start tracking how you're actually functioning in the day, when you're high, when you're low.
Yeah.
And how you might want to just change it to become more rhythmic and cyclical. And it's probably a good place to start with where does the body basically go first? Sleep at night, awake in the daytime. I think that's a good starting point. Most of us are, wake up and then try to push way late into the night, and that already, creates a lot of challenges. So I guess that's the first thing. And then just experimenting with different ways of working through that cycle and seeing what that feels like, and getting more and more comfortable with slower paced states because they're actually actively restoring you. They're not passive and they're not doing nothing. They're actually doing quite a lot. Your rest state is a very busy state for the organism. Maybe not for you in your work, but essential.
Yeah, not in terms of our capitalist production.
Yeah.
But for organism life, like the body is working really hard to restore. So having that low and slow moment a couple of times a day is really beneficial for our health long term. It'll improve our longevity. It'll push away the signs of burnout and get some buddies with you that want to do this as well.
Yeah.
Like the community element is vital. Bodies together now saying we're all resting, that's huge. We get that we can do this together, especially in the workplace, having a lunch break together, having a walk, having an extra coffee break. Sorry to the guys that want to earn more money, but I promise you, your production will be on the next wave up. Your production will be at a higher quality and it'll be a less cost to your health and you'll actually get more stuff done. I know it feels counterintuitive, but in the long run, this will pay off.
It's more sustainable. Yeah.
More sustainable. Yeah. Trust me, I'm burnt out in my early 20s. It's painful. You don't want to be there too long. Yeah. Yeah. The community element is really good as well. Yeah.
Thanks for the chat. And we'll also have a few links underneath the video with resources. And if you want to reach out to either of us for support, and go low and slow. That's my message.
Enjoy going low and slow. We'll see you at the next conversation.
Cheerio.
Bye.